Do you know the well-known saying, when life throws lemons at you, make lemonade, right? As I parked my car in front of the building that housed our cozy one-bedroom apartment, shared with my beloved wife Kelly, I couldn't help but ponder the current state of our marriage. Was it succumbing to the decay of spoiled lemons, or was it just the workings of my imagination? As I stepped out of the car, I collected the mail from our mailbox. The usual stack of bills, advertisements, and mostly addressed to occupant. I felt utterly drained, a feeling that had become a regular occurrence due to my relentless 16-hour workdays, 4 days a week, not to mention the meager day off I had to squeeze in at the nearby fast food joint. The reason behind this hectic schedule was quite simple. We had responsibilities to meet, bills to pay, and a dream of saving for a future house. Furthermore, I wanted to plan something truly special for Kelly on our upcoming 5th anniversary. Of course, it's not as if Kelly doesn't contribute. She manages our humble abode and also works at a travel agency, though the compensation is far from exceptional. On my part, I dedicate a full 40 hours each week to a customer service job, where I find myself constantly catering to complaints and processing orders for our valued clients. Admittedly, the monotony does take its toll, but the pay is decent, and the benefits package is something we appreciate. I earn a humble hourly wage of $1.18, supplemented by monthly commission checks and a bonus every 6 months, based on the overall success of the company. Typically, my commission checks surpass my hourly wage. Apart from that, I also juggle a part-time job at the fast food place, taking orders and handling transactions. It may sound mundane, and at times it is, but it brings a welcome break from my regular routine. I've been simultaneously managing both jobs for nearly 2 years now, and the strain is wearing me down. On the brighter side, I've managed to stabilize our finances and accumulate a substantial sum for a down payment on a house, amounting to over $7,000 per month before taxes. My plan is to eventually bid farewell to the second job, once our financial situation allows it. After our anticipated anniversary cruise, I intend to reassess our economic standing. For the past year, Kelly has been handling the bills due to my demanding schedule, and so far, she has managed to keep everything under control. Thanks to her connections at work, she managed to secure tickets for a 5-day Caribbean voyage for the two of us at a significant discount. As a result, I couldn't resist the temptation and upgraded to a suite with a balcony, treating ourselves to a pleasant ocean view. I was eagerly looking forward to spending some quality time alone with her on the open waters. Both of us made arrangements to take our vacation days concurrently following our workday tomorrow, which happened to be Friday. Weary and fatigued, I climbed the stairs to our apartment, unlocking the door. The place seemed unusually dim, with no sound other than the ticking of the wall clock. Strange, I thought to myself. Kelly never mentioned that she wouldn't be home. Placing the mail on the table, I flicked on the lights. The apartment was clean and neat as usual, but an unsettling feeling lingered in the air. "Kelly, I'm home," I called out, receiving no response. I stepped into the kitchen and noticed that nothing had been prepared. Typically, on days when I returned home late, she would leave a covered plate in the refrigerator, but there was nothing. In the bedroom, the bed was neatly made, but Kelly was nowhere to be found. I pulled out my phone, attempting to call her, but it went straight to voicemail. "Kelly, it's Sam," I said into the receiver. "By the way, Sam Carmichael, where are you?" "I'm at the apartment, please call me." Hanging up, I sent a text, but again, no response. In the closet, I noticed that several items were missing from her side. Where could she have gone? I wondered, feeling a prick of anxiety. Did she leave me? I opened her dresser drawers, only to discover some of her belongings absent. In the bathroom, most of her toiletries were gone. And then, I saw it. An envelope resting on the bathroom counter, addressed to me in her distinctive handwriting. Shaking, I picked it up and opened it. Making my way to the living room, I sat down and began to read her letter. The letter began abruptly, without the usual, "Here Sam, just Sam." That in itself didn't bode well. As I continued reading, the words conveyed that she understood the difficulty I would experience in comprehending the situation, and she anticipated my anger. She expressed her desire to explain that she had been engaged in an affair for the past several months and was currently on the planned cruise, sailing with the other person, instead of with me, as we had intended. She touched upon our discussions about starting a family, confessing that she no longer desired to have children with me. She acknowledged my qualities as a diligent worker, expressing the belief that I would make an exceptional father to her future children. She revealed that, at her lover's request, she had ceased taking contraception for the past 3 weeks to increase the likelihood of him being the one to impregnate her. She offered an apology for the detached tone of her words and assured me that her lover, Jake, was an extraordinary man in more ways than one. According to her, everyone at her workplace was aware of their relationship and supported their decision to embark on this trip together. The letter pressed on, stating that her colleagues believed that I would make an outstanding father to the children Jake and she intended to have. She admitted to having developed love for Jake, but stressed that it was not the same love she felt for me as her husband. She compared her current feelings to the love between close friends or siblings. Despite this change of feeling, she expressed that she did not want a divorce and believed that it was better for us to stay married. That way, our combined insurance could cover her pregnancies, and I could raise Jake's children. The letter outlined changes for the future, including spending nights at Jake's and spending nights with us. It suggested that I would have to find alternative accommodation for those nights, perhaps by considering a third job to keep busy while they were together. She mentioned that a close relationship between us would no longer happen, as Jake insists on exclusivity and she no longer feels excited about us. While acknowledging the possibility of anger and contemplation of divorce, the letter warned of the legal consequences, assuring me that pursuing a divorce would result in pension payments, half of my salary and child benefit. Despite acknowledging the pain, the letter conveyed that something was hurting her too. She and Jake decided to take a cruise using the tickets I had purchased, blocking my number to prevent calls or texts. They planned to share photos and videos to show what I would miss and take care of her safety. The letter concluded that I had to leave, as the taxi was already waiting, and she was meeting Jake at the airport. They decided to leave a day earlier to start the journey less tedious. She promised to contact me when she returned, and I could pick her up again. The letter expressed regret, but stated that this is how things should be from now on. It was signed your friend, Kelly. I was sitting in shock. The letter was slipping out of my hand. A friend? What was it about? What kind of friend needs enemies, I thought. Yes, something seemed wrong in the last few months, but I thought it was related to my schedule. That's why I planned this cruise. The more I thought about that letter, the more angry I got. I tore the ring off my finger and threw it across the room. To hell with her and her stupid ideas. If she thought I was going to sit here and accept this, she was wrong. Looking at my watch, 3 a.m. with only 5 hours until my day job, I knew I could only get some sleep. Thinking about whether to sleep in a bed, images of her with this Jake came flooding into my thoughts. Preferring the sofa, I took a pillow and a blanket and lay down, too tired to stay awake. I fell asleep, only to wake up the next day wondering why I was on the couch. Reality caught up with me when I remembered last night. After checking my mobile phone, I was hoping to get a message explaining that everything was a joke, but unfortunately, this did not happen. Reaching for the bathroom, I took a shower, got dressed, and hurriedly grabbed a cup of coffee for the road. Trying to put personal problems aside at work has proved difficult, especially listening to others complain about perceived problems. Although I was doing my best, my colleagues noticed my distracted state. After lunch, my supervisor, Wanda, called me to her office, signaling a problem. She expressed her sincere concern by asking me to close the door. Wanda asked about my well-being, asked if everything was okay at home, and advised me to consider quitting my catering job, since I had already worked 2 jobs. After some thought, I decided to open up about my situation. I confessed to Wanda that everything was not in order at home. Trusting her previous openness, I thought she deserved to know the details. She asked me to share, and in response, I handed her the letter that Kelly had left and handed it to her. Wanda read the letter, and when she was done, she returned it, shaking her head. She expressed her sympathy and understanding of the difficulties I was facing. After realizing that I had already planned a vacation for the next week, she expressed her understanding of the difficulties I was facing. Realizing that I had already planned a vacation for the next week, she suggested that I take the rest of the day off with a commercial absence. In addition, she offered me her recommendation and wrote down the name and number of the lawyer she used during the divorce. After giving me the information, she mentioned that she herself was in a similar situation and prompted me to call a lawyer, saying that Wanda recommended her. Being grateful for the advice, I expressed my gratitude to her, and she encouraged me to spend the next week clearing everything in my head and come back when everything becomes clear. She added a joking comment saying, "Remember, there are a lot of fish in the sea," to which I replied, "I hear you, Wanda." I thanked her again and then turned off my work area, informing my cute neighbor that I would be back in a week or so. He waved at me when I left. When I got to the car, I took the note that Wanda had given me and dialed the number. I went to the law office of Hawkins and Bledsoe, where the girl at the reception asked me about the purpose of my call. I asked to speak with Linda Hawkins, mentioning that I was recommended by Wanda Green. The girl put me on hold and returned a few minutes later, informing me that Ms. Hawkins had planned to attend court this afternoon, but she had free time at 4 p.m. She asked if I was comfortable with such a time, and I confirmed that it was perfect for me. I asked for the address of the office, and after writing it down, gratefully said goodbye to the receptionist and hung up. After checking the time, I realized that I had enough time to visit the travel agency where Kelly worked. I was hoping to step in and, if possible, refund the money for our plan. Arriving at the agency, I parked the car and went inside, where 4 other women in the main office raised their heads, expressing their understanding of the situation with their expressions. I went to the reception desk where Julie, the receptionist, was sitting and greeted her, voicing my intentions to see Kelly. After taking a look around, Julie informed me that Kelly was not present that day. She handed me a large envelope, explaining that Kelly had instructed her to give me this envelope if I came in. The other women were half laughing, leaving me wondering what they all knew. Opening the envelope, I was struck by a mixture of Kelly's smell, urine, and an unfamiliar smell. Inside, I found her wet panties folded in polka dots. Disgust gripped me, and I used a pencil to examine everything more carefully and found rings covered with a white, slimy substance that was unmistakably Jake's seminal fluid. There was also a USB flash drive at the bottom of the envelope. Turning away, I protested to Julie, who was mocking me. Looking around, I noticed that other women were doing the same thing. I asked if they were amused, and Julie turned away, embarrassed. She explained that the flash drive contains photos and videos from the farewell party organized for Kelly and Jake last night. When Kelly suggested that I would like it, an elderly woman came out of the back room, leaning against the wall of the front office and watching me. She informed me that Kelly and Jake had already left and that everyone at the agency knew about their relationship. When I asked if they approved of it, she shrugged and asked what I wanted. I expressed a desire to return the money, explaining that I had paid for the cruise and wanted to return it, since I did not have tickets. She replied that the tickets were non-refundable, and mentioned that it was nice of me to let Kelly issue 1 ticket in Jake's name. I argued with this statement, claiming that Kelly acted fraudulently and insisted on getting my money back. However, she refused, saying that this would not happen. In desperation, I stated that I intended to sue the agency and everyone involved. When I turned to leave, Julie stopped me, apologized for the situation, and explained that Kelly had told them that I approved of her actions. She urged me to let Kelly take the cruise, and stressed that there would be other opportunities. Curious about Julie's marital status, I asked if she was married, and she replied in the negative. I then expressed the pain of being betrayed by someone who claimed to love me, and warned her about the potential future pain she might experience. I emphasized my disdain for Kelly and left, leaving a harsh message for Julie. I told Julie to tell Kelly that I hate her and never want to see her again. I added a shocking statement expressing the hope that she would rot and die of AIDS. Julie and the others seemed shocked, and I ended up announcing my intention to meet them in court before anyone could respond. I had a few hours left before my appointment at Linda's office, and I parked in a shady spot in the park and took a short nap in the car, setting the time on my phone. Thinking about the injustice in the world, I asked myself the question, is there really no justice in this world? Sleeping made my condition a little easier, but when I sat in the driver's seat, my neck ached and I felt pain. Sipping warm coffee, I started the car. When I got to the building where Linda's office was located, I checked my appearance in the mirror. I looked exhausted. After straightening my hair, I took the letter from Kelly and the envelope from Julie and headed inside. At the office, I was greeted warmly by a blonde at the reception, who wrote down my name and directed me to a chair. She offered me a cup of fresh coffee, which I gratefully accepted. A few minutes later, she led me into Linda's office and slammed the door behind me. Linda Hawkins, older than me but still very attractive, stood up and held out her hand to me, which I accepted. She greeted me, expressing her joy at the meeting, and invited me to sit down. I thanked her and sat down, answering that she could call me Sam. With a slight smile, she acknowledged my presence and politely asked me to call her Linda, inquiring about the purpose of my visit. I informed her that I wanted to consider a divorce. Linda asked about the reason, and I explained that my wife was cheating on me. To emphasize the seriousness of the situation, I handed her the letter that Kelly had left me. Linda frowned as she read the letter, then handed it back to me. Asking about the envelope, I handed it to her, warning her about its contents. She opened it, reacting with a distorted face due to the unpleasant smell. After she closed it, handed it to me, she expressed understanding and said that she did not blame me for wanting a divorce. She asked about my goals in the divorce, to which I stated that I wanted, in fact, everything. I expressed a desire for her to be punished for her actions, noting not only infidelity, but also the involvement of the agency in my deception of more than $2,000. She acknowledged my ignorance of divorce laws and mentioned that the family court system in our state prioritizes economics over justice. Linda, expressing gratitude for the recommendation, explained that the absence of children is an advantage in the divorce court process, since children suffer the most. When I mentioned that we were renting a studio apartment and working overtime to save on the down payment on the house, Linda pointed out that this was one less problem. She asked about my wife's salary at the AA travel agency, asking about her income. I revealed that she earns about the same as my base pay, about $800 an hour. Linda explained that the court could order me to provide maintenance for several years if she didn't get married, and we would probably have to split up all assets, including retirement plans. As for infidelity, Linda explained that it cannot be mentioned in the documents due to the fact that the state is innocent, but it can be used in negotiations. When I was asked about the consultation, I stated that I had not considered this possibility, as there is no way to overcome this situation. Linda mentioned that the court could still award a consultation, and I asked about the possibility of the wife bringing her lover to the apartment. Linda asked about my wife's ability to invite people into the apartment, and asked if her name was listed in the lease agreement, to which I confirmed that it was listed there. She explained that if there were no threats of damage, then there was nothing I could do to prevent her from inviting people into the apartment, since she also lives there. I expressed my annoyance at the situation, and Linda acknowledged that divorce is difficult, describing it as something that happens to everyone. I laughed at her remark. Linda suggested that my wife might change her mind when she returned and reconsider our marriage. She suggested the idea of a legal separation to allow the situation to cool down, and if I still wanted a divorce after that, we will continue. Linda also advised me to consider quitting my second job, as earning more money could lead to increased financial demands. She noted that I seemed to have been overloading myself for a long time. Expressing my annoyance, I asked about a refund for the cruise. Linda assured me that we can consider ways to solve this problem. We discussed the details, and Linda took notes while we talked. When we were done, she handed me a checklist of cases, mostly related to the bank. I shook her hand and left, stopping at the front desk to leave a deposit at the exit. I still felt like shit about the whole situation, but at least I was doing something. I was thinking about quitting my second job. She was exhausting me, so I decided to come in and talk to the manager tomorrow to give notice. On the way home, I stopped by the bank and made the changes that Linda suggested. I paid off the joint credit card from Kelly and canceled it. Then I emptied half of all our joint accounts and put them in a separate account that I had already opened for bonuses and interest. Kelly didn't have access to that account anyway, so I figured he'd be safe. I planned to use this money for a house, but these plans collapsed. I came home, took the mail out of the mailbox, then ate the leftover meatloaf that Kelly had made a few days ago. She had a habit of cooking large portions and freezing leftovers for later. The defrosting process took some time, but it suited me fine. I sat down with lunch and looked through the mail, mostly garbage, crap, and promotional vibes addressed to a tenant or resident, with the exception of one letter that looked like an invitation, handwritten, with detailed calligraphy, addressed to me personally from something calling itself the Ramish Gallery. I had never heard of it before and almost put it aside, but I was prompted to open it. It turned out to be an invitation to a private art exhibition event. I wasn't sure if this was something Kelly signed me up for or not. She had always tried to get me interested in the arts, but I frankly just didn't have much time with my work schedule. The invitation said I should be there at 9:30 a.m. sharp. As I looked at the invitation, I felt as though this was something I needed to do. Don't ask me to explain it. I put the invitation on the refrigerator door with a magnet and decided to go. If nothing else, it might take my mind off my problems for a bit. I wore a pair of latex gloves and opened the envelope provided by Julie earlier. Overcoming the unpleasant smell emanating from its contents, I retrieved the underwear, noticing the ring resting in the wettest section. Placing them in a plastic sandwich bag, I sealed it tightly. I wiped down the USB drive with drinks, uncertain if it would make a difference, but opting for caution given the enclosed items. Setting up my laptop, I inserted the drive, anticipating I might not appreciate its contents, and my intuition proved correct. The folder contained pictures featuring Kelly alongside a man, presumably Jake, enjoying drinks and socializing with office friends. Jake's hands were prominently on her in the photos, and the other girls wore smiles. More images depicted Jake's closeness, while other girls, even their supervisor, watched. The penultimate picture showed Kelly over a toilet bowl, undressed, with two girls holding her underwear, one of them being Julie. In the underwear midst were her rings, the ones I had placed on her finger almost 5 years ago. Examining the photos, I could discern a stream of urine soaking the undergarment and the gold rings. The final picture portrayed Kelly still undressed over the toilet, underwear and rings underneath her, smiling into the camera as she waved. The others the toilet, underwear and rings underneath her, smiling into the camera as she waved. The others joined in, smiling and waving with her. I had never felt so humiliated in my life. Soon after, a surge of something else overwhelmed me. Hatred. At that moment, I despised her with every fiber of my being. Exiting that folder, I explored another containing several video files. Reluctantly previewing them, I was more focused on hearing what she and the others had to say rather than witnessing her with this individual. I reached the last video, curious about the reason behind her actions of using on her rings. Starting the video, I observed her adjusting herself over the bowl as others brought in the underwear. Kelly removed her rings as Julie and another girl extended her underwear beneath. They handed her rings to the older woman, who carefully placed them on the garment to prevent them from falling into the toilet. Jake inquired if she was ready, and Kelly, expressing a need to use the bathroom, looked directly into the camera, stating her intentions and expressing her feelings towards our marriage. She instructed one of the girls to bring in the envelope, emphasizing the inclusion of photos and videos. Kelly directed Julie to ensure that I received the envelope if I come by the next day. So I looked and found an email address for the CEO and the chairman of the board. I wrote an email threatening a lawsuit and attached copies of the video, then sent it off. I looked around and saw the pictures of Kelly and me on the end tables and on the wall. I lost it and tore them all down, ripping her image out of every one of them. I was looking for something else to destroy when I heard the doorbell ring. Who is that? I wondered. I looked through the peephole and saw Julie with another woman from Kelly's office. I couldn't remember her name at the moment I opened the door. I growled at them and they jumped back, shocked at my anger. Julie begged to talk, and I questioned their motives, expressing my reluctance to hear anything they had to say. Julie asked if they could come inside, and I pulled out my phone to start a voice recording. Opening the door, I let them in and sat down on the couch, demanding to know the reason for their visit. When asked if they could have something to drink, I declined, urging them to say what they came to say and leave. Julie exchanged nervous glances with the others before conveying that she had talked to Kelly earlier, who was very upset. I responded indifferently and sarcastically, suggested that they could make it up to me by drastic actions. They stared at me in shock, and Julie protested that I couldn't mean such things, reminding me that Kelly was my wife. In response, I handed her the letter Kelly left for me. Julie read it, and after returning it to me, she apologized. I accused them of being complicit in Kelly's actions and criticized their behavior in the video. Julie apologized again, stating that Kelly misled them into thinking I was okay with it. Expressing my dissatisfaction, I told them it was time to leave. After a while, they turned for the door, but Julie turned back before leaving, suggesting that she could help me get over this. I dismissed the idea, emphasizing that I couldn't trust her, and urged them to leave and never return. They left. I dismissed the idea, emphasizing that I couldn't trust her, and urged them to leave and never return. They left, and I locked the door behind them. Later, I decided to drown my sorrows. I drove to the convenience store on the corner, purchased a 6-pack of beer, and a couple of packs of cigarettes. I had quit drinking and smoking when we got married, but I decided to hell with it. Upon my return, I sat on the balcony, drank my beer, and ended up smoking several cigarettes before deciding to turn in for the night. The next day, I got up, showered, washed the beer and cigarette taste out of my mouth, dressed, and headed out. Looking online, I got directions to the gallery and realized I had just about enough time to get there by 9:30, so I headed out. After making a cup of coffee for the road, I pulled up to the Victorian house at the address on the invitation and was a bit surprised to see no other cars. Surely others would have been invited to this showing, I thought. Exiting the car, I approached the door. Before I could knock, it swung open, revealing a petite blonde woman in her early 20s. She greeted me as Mr. Carmichael, mentioning that I was right on time. Introducing herself as Dr. Adrestia Ramnisha, she extended her hand and I shook it. She confirmed that I was the only one attending the meeting and guided me into a room with a covered portrait on an easel. Instructing me to take a seat, she uncovered the portrait, cautioning that it might be shocking. As she lifted the cover, I saw a painting of Kelly lying in a strange bed with Jake beside her. Dr. Randisha apologized and covered the portrait again. I questioned how she obtained the painting and whether Kelly was behind this, expressing my lack of mucid fluid. She clarified that Kelly had not put her up to it and suggested we go to her office for an explanation. I followed her upstairs into an office filled with old books and scrolls. She pointed to a chair in front of her cluttered desk, instructing me to sit while she made tea. Confused about how tea could make the situation better, I sat down, still in shock. Dr. Randisha handed me a cup of tea, ensuring that I drank it. Strangely, I began to feel a bit better after a few sips. She smiled and sat down at her desk, and I demanded an explanation for what was happening. She nodded and explained that she helps people like me get justice. She had been watching my wife for some time and became actively involved after Kelly wrote the letter to me. She asked if I had any idea about what was going on, and I admitted that I didn't. I interrogated how she found out about the letter, questioning if she was trailing or spying on us, and if she was a private investigator. She replied that she wasn't precisely a private investigator, but explained that overseeing all marriages was her expertise for many years. She asked me to watch a video on the monitor, which appeared to be taken in my apartment. The video showed Kelly writing the letter at the kitchen table, and below it, words scrolled through, reflecting Kelly's thoughts as she wrote. The words revealed her intention to prevent me from filing for divorce and her plan to counter by citing cruelty or misuse, as advised by Jake. I asked about the words below the video and addressed you, explained that they were Kelly's thoughts as she wrote the letter. I questioned how it was possible, and she simply stated that it was proprietary. I asserted that Kelly's claim of misuse was a lie, as I had never done anything like that. Adresjet acknowledged that she knew, but unfortunately in this state, the court would be more inclined to believe Kelly than me, and she was aware of that fact. I remarked that my lawyer didn't mention the details Adresjet shared. She acknowledged that lawyers in the system were the real winners in divorces and emphasized that seeking justice or fair treatment was futile. Adresjet revealed that Kelly had informed Jake about her plan during a video on the monitor, showing them snuggling together in plain seats. Jake asked if she left the letter for me, and she admitted to it. He predicted my reaction and questioned what she would do when I filed for divorce. She responded that her lawyer would claim I smacked and misused her, even though she didn't mention it in the letter. The video ended, leaving me stunned. Expressing disbelief, I questioned how she could fabricate such a story without consequences. Adresjet explained that people pull off such things all the time. I then expressed confusion about Kelly's motives, highlighting my faithfulness, consistent provision, and hard work for our future. Adresjet suggested that perhaps I'd been too focused on finances and not spending enough time with her, though she clarified that it didn't justify Kelly's actions. I mentioned that Kelly could have communicated with me, and I would have given up the second job if I knew this would happen. Adresjet responded that it was no assurance this wouldn't have occurred anyway. I inquired about her suggestions for my course of action. She proposed assisting me in seeking some form of justice and asked if I would be open to that. I affirmed my willingness, seeking more details on how it could be done. Adresjet reminded me of my notion from the previous night, wearing a mischievous grin. Perplexed, I asked what she was referring to. She maintained the mischievous smile, rose from behind her desk, and approached me. Taking my hand, she signaled for me to stand and mentioned that their ship had already sailed early that morning. I acknowledged that I knew, having paid for the cruise. Adresjet agreed, suggesting that we should pay them a visit. Astonished, I wondered how we could accomplish that. She smiled as she held my hand. Suddenly, we found ourselves standing on the deck of a massive cruise ship. I glanced around and saw a few people on the deck, but I did spot Kelly and the idiot standing by the railing. She wore a tiny two-piece bikini that left little to the imagination. They were locked in an embrace, and Kelly was caressing the front of his suit. I cleared my throat to get their attention. Kelly expressed surprise and questioned how I got there and who was with me. I responded, stating that I represented justice and was there to ensure she paid for what she had done to her husband. Kelly and Jake chuckled at my statement. In a threatening tone, Jake demanded to know what I intended to do. As they started walking toward us, they slipped on something, lost their balance, and tumbled over the railing. I rushed to the railing and Adresjet joined me. We peered over the railing and Adresjet restrained me. Initially, I didn't comprehend why. Just as they descended about 15 feet, the largest shark I could ever imagine emerged from the water, its mouth wide open, revealing rows of large, jagged teeth. The mouth of this creature had to be easily 30 feet wide. I couldn't recall ever feeling so terrified. As I looked, Kelly screamed loudly, her eyes wide with fear. Suddenly, both she and Jake were in the shark's mouth. The monster closed its mouth, sending geysers of blood back up to the deck. Then it silently slipped back under the water. I heard cries from the deck and observed other passengers vomiting on the deck. Some had phones out, likely recording videos. A dress ship pulled me back and I heard klaxons blaring. Crew members hurried to the railing to assess if there was anything salvageable. But it was too late. A dress ship grabbed my hand and suddenly we were back in her office. I felt nauseated, but she swiftly held my head in her hands and the nausea subsided almost immediately. I expressed shock and inquired if the events genuinely happened. Adrestia seated me back in the chair and poured another cup of tea. She confirmed that it did happen, handing me the tea and suggesting that it would help. I took a sip of the tea and immediately felt much improved. I was still grappling with what I had just witnessed, but the sense of shock had dissipated. Simultaneously, I noticed something else. I felt no remorse whatsoever, no sadness, nothing. I felt nothing for what transpired with Kelly and Jake. I looked at Adrestia, seeking answers. Adrestia informed me that the tea provided would help me cope with the situation, and indeed, I felt much better after finishing it. Despite the fact that I was once deeply in love with Kelly, there was an absence of sadness over her demise, leading me to question my emotions. Addressing my concern, Adrestia reassured me not to worry about any lack of emotion, attributing it to a side effect of the tea that numbs negative emotions. Curious about Kelly's whereabouts, I inquired, acknowledging that I understood she was deceased. Adrestia acknowledged my religious upbringing, noting that I likely wondered about the afterlife. She invited me to follow her back to the showroom where she had unveiled the portrait. There, she uncovered the painting, revealing a drastic change. The portrait now depicted her face frozen in fear, her eyes wide, her mouth open in an eternal scream. Behind her face was the shark's maw, row after row of sharp teeth awaiting her. Adrestia gestured towards the painting, stating that it represented where Kelly was now, forever captured in her final moments. She explained that Kelly would spend eternity in that portrayal, regretting her decision to wrong me, a sort of self-made hell. As she hung the portrait on a vacant spot of the wall, among rows of similar paintings, Adrestia revealed that all the individuals depicted were cheaters, each one regretting their decisions for eternity. I expressed my realization, as she confirmed, emphasizing that this was her concept of justice. She had been carrying out this work for a significant period, and the walls were not even halfway filled. Curious about the duration of her endeavor, I inquired, and Adrestia responded that she had been engaged in this work for a longer time than I could imagine, expressing a sense of sadness. She took my head in her hands and looked at me intently. For a moment, I thought I saw a tear in her eye. Adrestia mentioned that the upcoming days would be challenging, but assured me that she would always be with me, residing in my heart regardless of age. She encouraged me to go on and live a long life, suggesting the possibility of finding a new love, as she believed someone was waiting for me. After a kiss on the cheek, I felt content, and even now, I can't fully explain the feeling. She accompanied me to the door and closed it behind me. After I left, Sheikh and I drove to my second job and turned in my notice. The manager wasn't too upset, but he understood and wished me well. We left on a good note, and he said he would have my final check mailed to me. I drove back home, grabbed a beer, and sat in front of the television. For a while, I thought it strange that I still didn't feel any remorse over Kelly's demise. I turned on the television and found that the video of the shark incident had already made the news. It turned out that several people had taken video of what happened. As I flipped through the channels, I saw that several news programs were already talking about the feasibility that such a large beast could exist. All of the reports said they were still waiting for the identity of the sufferers to be released. Going online, I found that video of the shark had also gone viral on social media. It was everywhere: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. I couldn't watch the video, so I turned my computer off. I grabbed a pile of trash bags and went through the apartment, collecting all of Kelly's things. Before long, I had everything packed up and stuffed in her car. I called her mother and told her that she needed to come get it. "Why, Sam?" she asked. I told her about Kelly's cheating, but didn't tell her about Kelly getting eaten by a giant shark. She was understandably upset and said her and Kelly's father would be by to pick it all up later that day. They came by that afternoon and left. After making a tearful plea to patch things up with her, I made it clear that no reconciliation was possible. I still didn't tell them about her getting eaten. I figured they would learn about that soon enough. After they left, I dressed and went to a bar and grill where I consumed a juicy burger and several beers. I got through the rest of the weekend somehow and woke up late Monday, since I was technically on vacation. I sat in front of the television with a bowl of cereal as a news report came on saying the offices of AITA travel agency had been destroyed by fire. According to the report, everyone got out okay, but just barely an hour or so later, I got a call from Julie, who was more than a bit shaken up. She informed me about the office burning down, recounting the strange incident where Kelly's desk spontaneously caught fire. They narrowly escaped the flames. She mentioned receiving a peculiar text from Kelly just before the fire, containing references to sharks and the hounds of hell. Julie expressed confusion about the message, to which I replied that I had no idea. The conversation ended, and I sat back smiling to myself. I took a drive to see Adrestia and asked her about the fire, but the Victorian mansion that housed her gallery was gone. I sat there and looked at the empty lot, wondering what happened. After a while, I shook my head and drove home. Update. After a couple of weeks, I received word from the cruise line about Kelly's demise. They conveyed the news of her pass away and included a check covering the cost of my tickets, along with the payout from the accidental pass away and dismemberment policy linked to the tickets. I reached out to Linda, informing her that our separation was no longer necessary. While she offered condolences, they held no significance for me. A few weeks later, the travel agency's headquarters contacted me. They proposed a substantial sum of money in exchange for my silence and a commitment not to pursue legal action. Additionally, they revealed that the entire office where Kelly worked had been terminated, with considerations for a new team in their revamped office. After contemplating their offer, I decided to accept it. Kelly's parents organized a memorial service for their daughter, but I opted not to attend or send flowers. Although they were displeased, they acknowledged my feelings. Life continued, and it took quite some time before I resumed dating. With the elimination of my second job, I began frequenting the gym to regain fitness. The effort paid off, attracting attention from several women in my workplace. While I went on a few dates, I refrained from committing to a relationship. It took a couple of years before I felt ready to trust another woman at that level. Eventually, I found someone. Marcy, a coworker who went through a divorce after discovering her husband in their marital bed. We've been dating for a while now, and I'm seriously contemplating proposing to her. All in all, life is looking up. Dora Adrestia moved on to the next case that came her way. One day, however, she sat down at her desk and took a long look at everything, the pain, the anguish, and the pleas for help. Overwhelmed, she put her head in her hands and did something she hadn't done for 2 millennia. She wept.